Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. We've got from Boston 25 in Boston, Butch Stearns, who covers the Patriots. Thanks for being with us.
Round two, Mike. Round two.
Yeah, now we talked a couple of weeks ago leading into that first game. And of course, the game ended up being estrangement. I mean, we talked about weather, but it ended up being a really big thing. So I want to know your perspective since that game. We saw the Bills go down, play terribly in the first half, and almost beat Tampa, and then, figure out a way to beat Carolina. And when the Patriots had a week off and then had that game against the Colts, has that Colts game changed your perception at all of this Patriots team as we go into this matchup with Buffalo?
A little bit. I think it's changed the perception they have of themselves just a little bit. Here's a couple of things. First of all, what the heck do you and I know? Because we both picked the Bills to win that game up in the windstorm. But who knew what the elements were going to be that day? But since then, the Bills gutted out a win against a tough Carolina defense. I give them credit for that. I still think they're a little too one-dimensional, although that Singletary touchdown might have changed a few minds there. But the Patriots were outcoached and outplayed, and I mean really outcoached by Frank Reich and the Colts. They still almost came back and gave it a game, but really, if you watched that game and went by the eyeball test, they were never in that football game. It's the old adage, in my opinion, the Colts really wanted it better than them. And by the way, Bill Belichick almost always wins the special teams battle. This is the third punt they've had blocked this year. I'm sure the Bills have looked at that on film also. So it's rare the way they lost. So to answer your question directly, there is a different feeling, perspective, aura around the Patriots. And by the way, here's where we thought we'd be all along. The division's going to be decided in this game in Foxborough.
Yeah, when I look at that game, a lot was made about obviously the game plan that Patriots had in Orchard Park with all the runs and only 3 passes. And it was not lost on people, certainly in Western New York, that's kind of what the Colts did to the Patriots, not weather related, basically the type of team that they have. And then we had to see Mac throw the ball more in this pass game. And I will say, as much as they were down, I did see, at least from me watching it, I saw a little bit there of the ability to get his team going again. Of course, it wasn't enough. Getting the lead seems to be a massive thing in terms of actually really for both of these teams right now.
Well, it's no secret how the Patriots won 7 in a row. You're right. They did get out on top. They did not make any mistakes, and they won the turnover battle every single time. Duh. But that's how they won it. But no disrespect to them. I think when it comes to Mac Jones, Mike, you and I talked about this 2 weeks ago. You used the comparison of Josh Allen before that Hail Murray game, and you said that a couple of drives, was the first time you really said, okay, now we've seen it. We've seen Josh Allen come back and do it, even though they lost that game. I don't think anybody thinks that Mac Jones is going to poop his pants in those situations. I think what we're really seeing and what we saw in the Colts game is he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him, with all due respect to Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar and Hunter Henry. They have really good running backs. They have a good offensive line, but he doesn't have game breakers around him. There isn't one guy that the Buffalo Bills are going to try to stop and do that. And then there's the question of his arm strength. Although if I look at those 2 interceptions in Indianapolis, Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke, the guy who allegedly trash-talked Mac Jones last week, those were great plays. I'm not so sure, but there were still questions about Mac, Mike. There were still questions about him. I don't think the question is whether the guy can handle it, whether the lights are too bright. He played at Alabama. I think he's fine. He almost brought them back in this game. The questions are about what he has around him, and if the game is put on his shoulders. If the Bills want to win this game, they want to follow a similar plan. I know they're probably not going to run the football like the Colts did, but they want to put the game on Mac's shoulders and make him beat them. That's their best chance to win, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I said up here that, look, the Bills need to win the quarterback matchup. If Mac Jones plays even or better than Josh Allen, the Bills are not going to win this game. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but for the Bills, let me amend what you said. Fully agree. The Bills need to win the quarterback matchup, but to win the quarterback matchup, I think they need to put Mac Jones in a position where he needs to win the quarterback matchup, because during that 7-game winning streak, as well as he played, he really just didn't screw it up. And that's no disrespect to him. But now all of a sudden, he was put in a position to have to win that game. And again, the jury's still out. We still don't know. I mean, he brought them back. And then, it just didn't work. Jonathan Taylor delivered the dagger at the end there against the Patriots. So fully agree with you that if the Bills don't win the quarterback matchup, I mean, Josh Allen's, but that's been the formula for the Bills for 2 years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he's played very well. He played well even coming off his foot injury and played well. I'm fascinated by McDermott and Belichick together. And I was in the room after the game when McDermott was asked about the psychological component of going against Belichick. And it's a rare time we've seen a crack from McDermott to say something, to actually say something. And while I agree with him to a large extent that, there's two NFL coaches as great as Belichick is, it's no coach wants to hear that, especially he's not some rookie in his first season. But the fact that he said it, how do you believe Belichick processes that and maybe even uses that to some extent going forward?
I think as fans, when it comes to NFL head coaches, we forget this key fact, Mike. They're just as competitive as the quarterbacks are.
Yeah.
Aren't they? I mean, they handle it in different ways. For example, 2 weeks ago when Cliff Kingsbury was touted as the coach of the year, he just smirked and smiled. And of course, he was drafted under Belichick and played for him for a couple of years. Said, why don't we just call it the Belichick Trophy? And, when he retires, then we'll give it under his name, if that's the case from now on. But they're competitive as heck. Frank Reich and that Colts staff, that was their Super Bowl that they wanted. And Reich, by the way, has beaten Belichick twice. He was the offensive coordinator in the Malcolm Butler game when the Eagles called the Philly special and beat them in that Super Bowl. So I liked to hear that too. Not sure if Buffalo fans heard what Bill Belichick did yesterday, Monday. Bill Belichick after the game was even for him, and rude and all of that after the game. On Monday morning, he said, guys, I just want to start my press conference by apologizing to you. And he went on to talk about an apology for the way he handled himself in front of the media and that we didn't deserve that. And he should have been more professional. And then he ended it with the line, it's not your fault, from Good Will Hunting with Robin Williams sitting on the park bench. And we were like, what? So if you guys are shocked that you saw a little crack from Sean McDermott, think of how we feel with Bill Belichick right now.
Apologizing to the media. Wow, it's the Christmas miracle, I guess.
It was a Christmas miracle. That's the perfect way to put it.
I remember asking Mike Reese about this, and you see Mike, when you're covering this team, and with Belichick, and I asked him, how do you ask questions of him? Like we've all asked questions of head coaches, players, all this stuff. It's different with Belichick. You could get nothing, you could get dismissed. And on occasion, he gives you a real thought out answer. Usually it's about somebody else. Mike actually said he writes them down so he can make the point he wants to make. Do you feel different asking Belichick questions in a news conference as opposed to anybody else?
No, I've had fans, I've had buddies that have criticized me when I pop up and ask a question of Belichick. And I'm like, do you want to hear yourself ask the question, or do you want to actually get a good answer?
Right.
Because the longer you've interviewed a guy like Bill Belichick, it's how you ask the question a lot of times. Sometimes it needs to be very direct. Sometimes it needs to be prefaced. If you just ask him that question, okay, just ask him. He's going to give you a one-word answer.
Right.
Or he's going to go. But you're absolutely right. You want to get him talking about the history of football. You want to get him appraise the team's opposing quarterback or Pro Bowl player. I mean, he'll go off on that and things like that. But it is the way you have to ask him the question. I don't write it down, but I do think about it before I'm about to ask him the question, Mike.
Yeah, and even with McDermott, I always try to preface it because I'm trying to avoid the immediate cliched answer or the dismissed answer, as in, I know this is the case, But then you go on to the next one. So yesterday we were talking to McDermott, and I asked him about this, and I found this interesting with Belichick too. In these circumstances now, where it's a 4-down league, I mean, everybody's going for it, 2-point conversions all the time. And I noticed when, Belichick went for the field goal in that game, which was a normal way to proceed in, I don't know, before 2020 or whenever it happened to be. Both of these guys, I still believe, stay a little more old school. Do you agree with that with Belichick? And do you think he'll, I don't mean be a gambler, but be more aggressive in those circumstances? Or does it depend on who he's got? He doesn't have Brady. He's got a young quarterback.
You nailed it. But I also think it's interesting. It's come full circle because in my history covering Bill Belichick, and that's all the 21 years he's been here as coach now, is that 22 years. This is 22nd season. Yeah, 2020 was his first one. But he wasn't more of a gambler, but when the exception was to go for it on fourth down, Belichick would often go for it on fourth down, but he had strategy behind it. One of his biggest criticisms over the years was a game he lost in Indianapolis.
That's when I was going to ask you about. Yeah,
and we call it the
territory, right?
We call it the 4th and 1 game. You know what his logic was there, Mike? I ain't giving the ball back to Peyton Manning.
Right.
Belichick is also the type of guy, he beat Manning in Foxborough one time by giving him the ball in overtime when it was the old school overtime. And why did he do that? Because he wanted to win. He wanted to win with him, not against him. It was a similar, not identical, but similar to the Buffalo game 2 weeks ago. So do I think Belichick is more conservative? No, I think football's come more full circle, and now NFL coaches seem like the NBA three-pointer mentality.
Yeah.
You only got to hit 32% of those because they're worth 3 points instead of 2. Well, 50% of the time you make the fourth down, so why not go for it?
Yeah. I'm all for them being more aggressive. I like certain circumstances when you go for 2. I do think there are times when, it does depend on who you are going against. I mean, I watched that Kansas City Chargers game where they just kept saying, well, we're going to keep going for it and not get it. And then we're going to give it to you, and that's going to happen. And even Baltimore. And I don't even know if the numbers are in their favor, but Harbaugh's done it twice, missed both times, and that team's on the verge of maybe not making the playoffs. Doesn't guarantee you win if you tie it. But do you believe, I think there's almost a little bit of, I've got to do this or I'm going to look like a dinosaur. Not saying these two guys coaching this week, but it's almost like I better be the guy being aggressive or I'm going to get that criticism right away if it doesn't work out.
It's one of the things I've always respected about Belichick. He's not easy to deal with all the time. But when he says, all I care about is winning the football game, he backs it up. I think Brandon Staley was trying to be the new Sean McVay, the new smartest guy in the room. Right from the get-go. It's like, are you kidding me? What are you leaving point? And I understand the mentality. It was, well, you don't beat the Kansas City Chiefs by kicking field goals. Well, you lose to them by not kicking field goals in that situation. Yeah. In the Harbaugh one, I actually agreed with him going for it in Pittsburgh. Actually, that play almost worked. But then with a backup quarterback, you have momentum. You scored the last 13 points. Going against Green Bay, I'm sorry. I'm taking my chances going into overtime in that situation. I didn't agree with his second one. So, I think Belichick actually, to his credit, does things to win the football game. Not sure if you remember this one. I believe it was 2003 or 4. It was the last time a team has won back-to-back Super Bowls. It was in that stretch. The Patriots, of course, were the last ones to do it. They had a game in Denver, and they were trailing by 8 or whatever it was, or 10. And they were punting, and he had instructed the punter to snap it over the punter's head and take a safety.
Yeah.
But they ended up coming back and winning the game. When he did it, every single person in football, every single person in New England, what the hell is he doing? What he was actually doing was giving himself the only chance to win the game, and that's what they did. They ended up winning the football game because they got the football back twice and scored twice to do it. So that was one of these Belichick moments. I'm never going to question what the guy does. We question him all the time. But, I think he genuinely does things to win the football game, not to be the smartest guy in the room.
Well, I went off on this tangent only because we are talking about the game for the division lead and doesn't guarantee anything if Buffalo wins, but it puts them in a great spot. Obviously, it wins it if the Patriots get the win. If the weather looks like it's going to be okay, normal weather. right?
Yes.
We're not going to have the extremes. What kind of game do you expect?
I expect this to be a fight. I mean, it was a fight the last time. The elements kind of overshone that. But I mean, all the cliches apply to this one, don't they, Mike? These two teams do not like each other. These two teams know each other very well. I mean, the Colts and Patriots didn't like each other, but the Colts wanted that game more. I think both teams are going to want this game. You and I debated the last time about who needed to win more or more pressure that was on it. And you said, if I remember vehemently, the Buffalo
Oh,
Bills,
yeah.
that the pressure was on them. Well, I'm not going to say they didn't respond to it, but they did lose the game.
Yep.
I would say now it's equal, right? I
Yes.
mean, the Patriots are supposed to win this game. They're at home, right? And they're supposed to defend their turf. But what do we really know about the Patriots? We know they're a good team in the mold, like you and I talked about 2 weeks ago, of the 2001 Patriots, led by their defense with a young quarterback that's not going to screw it up. But is he going to be able to win the game? We do know that Josh Allen is still a legitimate MVP candidate and can win a game on his own shoulders. I would love this to be live up to the hype and this to be a bang bang football game. I think it's going to be a punch you in the face game where both teams are going to continue to respond to each other. I don't think you're going to have the Patriots imposing their will on the Bills, and I think that got overblown a little bit in the win game, but still. That was a mano thing for the Patriots, and they did impose their will by the end of the game on them. I don't think you're going to see that this Sunday.
I said here, and it's maybe, it's a little hyperbole, but I said it's a bit of a referendum on the process that the Bills went through to get where they are, only because they set themselves up. They've made that movement up to the playoffs, to the AFC title game. This is their Super Bowl year. And not only are they looking up in the division, they're looking up at the Patriots with a rookie quarterback while they have Josh Allen. And if you get swept by New England in a year where you're expected to win the division and maybe go to the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean that they can't come back from this. But boy, that would be tough to take for the Bills in the place they were in coming into this season.
Well, Mike, you're asking, I think, an off-season question, and I agree with you. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Bills fans, but you've covered the Bills for so long. I think you know this better than anybody. The Bills came into this season a little bit, and I don't disrespect them for it, but they came in acting like they had won something, and they really haven't won anything.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Okay.
They were pointing to a rematch with the Chiefs in the AFC title game in Orchard Park.
I mean, they're not the Colts who hung a banner for AFC semifinalists, okay? And the Bills know all too well during the great, great Jim Kelly years, they were never able to get over that hump, except for one field goal. They would have won at least one of those Super Bowls. But again, win something. You got to win something. So is this devastating if they lose on Sunday? It shouldn't be, because they're still in the progression stage. They really haven't won anything. I know their fans have anointed them. And part of that, let's be honest, was that the Patriots took a step back last year.
Yeah.
And you thought they were in the rearview mirror. Well, they're not anymore. I would love for this game to be an annual battle like this going forward, wouldn't you? I think they should. They used to make Brady Manning a game November and beyond. I hope they continue to make Bills Patriots November and beyond and play them late in the year instead of early in the year, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. And I think this is what it's going to be. And I'm enjoying seeing these two teams as actual rivals, because it's 34 years for me covering this team. The Patriots and Bills have rarely been true rivals.
Right.
They've
well,
only had
I grew up,
times.
talked to Steve Grogan and that crew and all of them when they played the Jim Kelly Bills, and they considered them rivals because they were the team to beat. They didn't, the Bills didn't dominate the Patriots back then. They had really good football games, and they were cerebral games and physical games. Right. And that's the last time I can remember them being somewhat equals. Yeah.
Brief time in the 90s, when Flutie was better here and, was still Bledsoe, all that was going on. They had their moments, but in most cases, the Bills' rival was the Dolphins in the 90s, and the Bills never even challenged the Patriots over the 2 decades.
Yeah.
They
and
just
the Patriots rival for a lot of people, despite the fact that the Jets have been even in more woeful, has always been the Jets.
It has been. And they beat them in the playoffs, right? I mean, the Jets with Rex Ryan beat them in the playoffs. So even the Dolphins won a division during those 20 years, and the Bills were never able to do it. Well, now they are rivals. Now it's on. And while they're a few years apart, they both have younger quarterbacks. And the last thing I want to ask you is, you said about being around Belichick for a long time. Who knows how long he wants to do this? But even though he's a rookie, how much impact do you think finding Mac Jones, at least appearing to be a guy he can win with, will impact what Belichick wants to do in his career?
It's a great question. I think it does impact him. I think because he did find him. I think a lot of factors, that it came from a recommendation from his best buddy, Nick Saban. And so far, Saban's turned out to be right. I mean, Max had the best season we talked about this 2 weeks ago, the 5 rookies by far. How long Belichick's going to coach, I always go back to this. He was sort of hung this year on this quote that he had about 10 years ago. Well, I know when Marv Levy retired, he said, I know I'm not going to be Marv Levy. And Marv Levy coached till he was, what, 72?
Oh, older than that. Yeah, Marv was later 70s when he finished. Yeah. Well, he came back as GM of the Bills when he was about, he's 97 now.
Yeah. But when Bill said, I'm not going to be Marv Levy, well, he sort of is Marv Levy now. He's 69. He's going to be 70 next year. I think Belichick was born to be a football coach. He grew up in his dad's duffel bag when he was the head coach of Navy. I think Belichick will coach till the last drop. I wouldn't be surprised if he's coaching for 5-6 more years. I really wouldn't. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he walked away either. And maybe Josh McDaniels has something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
He almost walked away before. He's going to get chances now, despite the fact that he left the Colts at the altar. I think, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and you have Trevor Lawrence, how do you not consider Josh McDaniels or even Brian Daboll as a head coach for your quarterback whisperer? But I think Belichick's going to coach for a couple of more years. I don't think we're going to see him go anywhere for a few more years. And I think Mac Jones is a factor. You're very right about that, Mike.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, we need a pick. Last time we were both wrong because we both had the Bills. What do you got? What do you got for Sunday?
I gotta say 24-20 Patriots. I don't see the Patriots losing this game. However, they could. I just hope. I honestly, for all that we just talked about, I hope it's a great football game. I doubt that it's going to come down to a failed 2-point conversion by either coach. So that's why I'm saying something like 24-20 Patriots.
All right. I have seen so many games, not necessarily against the Bills, in Foxborough, December, January. It feels like they win every one of them because they almost did.
I feel a big butt coming on here, Mike.
I have a feeling that the Bills, because of the way they lost that last game, and they felt like that was not them, I think they find a way to get it done. I think it's close. I'm going to go 24-20 in the opposite way, and it's a total guess. It's a total guess. I will tell you this. I've been terrible picking the Bills all year, but I picked them exact score in Tampa and by 1 point difference against the Panthers. That's one thing. Picking them against the Patriots is never easy. Well, it used to be easy for me. I just picked the Patriots every time.
Well, but if you've been picking, I had that one of those years last year. So people waited to hear what my pick was, and they wanted me picking against the Patriots.
This year it's been hard to get a grip on what the Bills are, and even to this point. But hey, this is the game that doesn't totally decide the season, but it's pretty close. But hey, it's great stuff. We appreciate it. Great insight after a few decades covering Belichick and the Patriots, and we look forward to the game on Sunday. Let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and where you are in Boston, because I had people from here reach out to me. They saw me on Boston 25 the last time when we did this.
At Boston25news.com is the website. I'm on Twitter at Butch Stearns, ButchStearns. Just reach out to me there. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. Thanks, Butch. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you up there for the game on Sunday.
All right, Mike. We'll see you on Sunday. Thanks. Always a pleasure.
Right. Thanks for all of you for being with us here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, and we'll see you the next time.